Namaskar. I am Karthik Rajbhar of class 12H and today I am going to take you to the journey of India's archaeological advancement after 1947. In the 75 years of independence, India has emerged as a knowledge power by taking up each and every field of scholarship. And archaeology is not an exception to it. In our class 12 history course, we are supposed to take up research project through which we learn the methodology adopted by professional historians. We are trained to see the things the way a historian would do. During the summer vacations, I had taken up the project, the Harappan culture. It is a year-long project, but the preliminary investigation had made me trained to investigate and answer some of the questions that arose in my mind. First of all, what is archaeology and how it is useful in the investigation of Harappan culture? Second, how did the excavation took place at Harappan sites and who all were involved into it? Third, how did the historians classify the objects and study them? Fourth, how did the Indian scholars started their research on Indian archaeological site as most of the site got into Pakistan after independence? And then the mystery behind the script of Harappa, and finally the mysterious end of this great civilization. So the popular image of archaeology seems to be of treasure hunter or professor commanding an army of laborers in the excavation of lost civilization in a strange or exotic land. That sounds interesting, right? But that is not exactly accurate. So what is archaeology? Archaeology is the study of cultures that lived in the past. It is the subfield of anthropology which is related to the study of human cultures. The other subfields are cultural anthropology that studies the human living cultures, and physical anthropology that studies the human biology and where human can fit in the living or extinct species of our family tree, and then the linguistic ones that studies the human language. Archaeology is primarily concerned with the reconstructing of extinct cultures from the material remain of the past human behavior and from the things that people made or used and left behind them. All these things are called artifacts. Much of what we see around us, computer, mobile phone, clothing, food, book, buildings, etc. are all artifacts. Even a stick of wood or human bone can be artifact if humans have used them for a special purpose in the past. And archaeologists use all these artifacts to build a model of what a culture was like. Archaeologists look for the pattern in the artifacts they study, and the artifacts give them clue that how the people who made and used them lived. For instance, the way of making pottery changed over time, reflecting the skills, different technologies used to produce it, the way people designed or decorated the pottery, and the way how people use the pottery. Now let us talk about the Harappan civilization. The civilization was identified in 1921 at Harappa in the Punjab region. The identification of Harappan civilization in the early 20th century was considered to be the most significant archaeological discovery of Indian subcontinent. Not because it was one of the ancient civilizations of the world, but because it stretched back the antiquity of settled life in the Indian subcontinent. The civilization was dated between circa 2600 BCE and 1900 BCE. The civilization was unique if compared to the two contemporary civilizations that are Mesopotamia and Egypt. It was much bigger in size than the Mesopotamian Egyptian civilization put together, and it spread beyond the Indian subcontinent. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
Now, what is the relevance of Harappan civilization in today's world? This is probably the most intriguing question. Harappan civilization forms an important landmark in the history of Indian subcontinent. It offers an excellent example to the modern world in various ways. Their expertise in town planning, water management and drainage system are unparalleled in the contemporary world. They had public and private wells at most of their sites, and their houses were often equipped with bathing areas and toilets. They were also technologically very advanced, like in pyrotechnics and metallurgy. Their craftsmanship is evident from the beads, pottery, jewelry, seals, and other artifacts recovered from the Harappan sites. Their trade network was also quite widespread. They had standardized weights and measures. They often used standardized bricks in the architecture. Recent studies have shown that the Harappans are probably the first one to introduce silk and lost wax casting techniques. No large weapons have been recovered from Harappan sites, which suggests that they were not included or indulged in warfare. This is a Harappan seal which I made during my project work. The Harappan script usually have a line of writing probably containing the name or title of the owner. Scholars have suggested that the motif, usually an animal, conveyed a meaning to those who could not read. Most inscriptions are short, but the longest inscription found from one of the Harappan sites contained 26 signs. Although the script remained undeciphered to date, it was evidently not alphabetical, since it had just too many signs, somewhere between 375 and 400. That is why it is often referred to as an enigmatic script. It is also apparent that the Harappan script was written from right to left, since the most inscriptions shows wider space on right and cramping on left, as if the engraver started writing from right and then ran out of space. Now let us talk about some of the archaeologists who helped piecing together the glorious past of India. In this video, we will talk about well-known archaeologists. First of all, we will talk about Alexander Cunningham. He was the first Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India. He began his archaeological excavation in the mid-19th century. Archaeologists prefer to use the written word, text, and inscription as a guide to their investigations. In fact, Cunningham's main interest was in the archaeology of early historic, circa 6th century BCE to 4th century CE, and later periods. When he excavated the sites, he tended to recover the artifacts that he thought had cultural value. A Harappan seal was given to him by an Englishman. He noted the object but unsuccessfully tried to place it within the time frame which he was familiar. This was because he, like many others, thought that the Indian history began with the first cities in the Ganga Valley. Given his specific focus, it is not surprising that he missed the significance of Harappa. Subsequently, seals were discovered at Harappa by archaeologists such as Dayaram Sahni in the early decades of the 20th century, in layers that were definitely much older than the early historic level. It was then their significance began to be realized. Another archaeologist, R.D. Banerjee, found similar seals at Mohenjodaro, leading to the conjecture that these sites were part of a single archaeological culture. Based on these finds, in 1924, John Marshall, Director General of ASI, announced the discovery of Indus Valley civilization to the world. John Marshall's stint as Director General of ASI marked a major change in the Indian archaeology. He was the first professional archaeologist to work in India and brought his experience of working in Greece and Crete in the field. More importantly, though like Cunningham, he too was interested in spectacular finds, he was equally keen to look for the patterns in everyday life. Now let us look at some of the major development in Harappan archaeology. We will see that in which year which archaeologist excavate which site. So let's begin. In 1875, Alexander Cunningham published his report on Harappan seal. In 1921, M.S. Wirtz began excavation at Harappa. In 1925, excavation began at Mohenjodaro. In 1946, R.M. Wheeler excavates at Harappa. In 1955, S.R. Rao begins his excavation at Lothal. In 1960, B.B. Lal and B.K. Thapar begin excavation at Kalibangar. In 1974, M.R. Mughal began exploration in Bahawalpur. In 1980, a team of German and Italian archaeologists began surface exploration at Mohenjodaro. In 1986, American team began excavation at Harappa. In 1990, R.S. Bisht began excavation at Dharohar. Here you can see some of the famous Harappan sites, and under them it is written that what all archaeological findings were found by the archaeologists during excavation. The sites are Harappa, Mohenjodaro, Lothal, Kalibangan, Banavali, and Dholavira. So now, since it is a year-long project, things will be built up once I take up intense research after reading several sources. But my first encounter to the project work has made me see things like a historian. I have become more like a detective who keeps on searching the sources and interpret them in a thoughtful and explanatory manner. So with this, I am ending this video. Hope you all like it. Thank you.